Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the massive platform, looking up at the enormous chamber that housed the Galactic Council. The ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into darkness above her. Around the circular room, hundreds of seats held the strangest collection of beings she had ever seen. There were the Zephyrians, looking like living crystals that caught and threw back the chamber's light in rainbow patterns. Their bodies made soft chiming sounds when they moved. Next to them sat the Karathi, with their long, thick tentacles that never stopped moving. They had no faces that Sarah could see, just smooth heads with clusters of eyes scattered around them like black pearls. The insect-like Vextar clicked and buzzed in their section, their wings making quiet humming noises. Some looked like giant beetles, others like praying mantises the size of horses. Their compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like tiny mirrors. There were dozens of other species too. Some floated in tanks of colored liquid. Others wore environmental suits that hissed and steamed. A few looked almost human but not quite right. Their proportions were off, or they had too many fingers, or their skin was the wrong color. Sarah had spent months preparing for this moment. Earth's first contact with the galactic community was supposed to be a celebration. Humanity would finally join the great civilization that spanned the stars. They would share knowledge, trade, and explore the universe together. But that was before Earth's scientists had figured out what humanity really was. The chamber fell quiet as Chairman Vextar Hive Prime raised one of his forearms. He was larger than the other Vextar with golden stripes across his dark shell. When he spoke, his voice came through the translation device as a deep, formal tone. We welcome the representative of the species called humans from the world designated as Earth. Sol 3, we understand you wish to petition for membership in our council. Sarah stepped forward and bowed slightly. She had practiced this moment many times, but her heart still raced. Thank you, Chairman Hive Prime. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, speaking for all of humanity. A ripple of sounds moved around the chamber. Some species made noises that might have been laughter. Others just watched with their various types of eyes. Before we discuss membership, Sarah continued, I have been instructed to deliver an important message to this council. The chairman's antennae twitched. We are listening. Sarah took a deep breath. My government wants to warn you about approaching Earth without proper diplomatic protocols. While humanity desires peaceful relations with all species, our homeworld has defensive capabilities that could be dangerous for uninvited visitors. The chamber erupted. The sound was incredible. The Karathi's tentacles writhed and slapped against their seats. The Zephyrians chimed like broken bells. The Vextar's buzzing became so loud it hurt Sarah's ears even through her protective gear. Chairman Hive Prime raised all forearms and slowly, the noise died down. Did we understand correctly? Are you warning us about your planet's defenses? Yes, sir. We are. More laughter echoed around the chamber. A Karathi delegate floated higher in its seat, its tentacles weaving patterns in the air. When it spoke, its voice was like bubbles popping. Young species, we have been traveling between stars for over 10,000 of your years. We have conquered worlds with our minds alone. What could your small planet possibly have that would threaten us? Sarah had expected this reaction. She had been told it would happen. But she pressed on. I cannot give you details about our defensive systems, but I can tell you that approaching Earth without permission would be a very bad idea. A Zephyrian spoke next, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. We have ships that can crack planets in half. We have weapons that can turn stars into black holes. Your people have barely reached your own moon with chemical rockets. What defenses could you possibly have? I am not allowed to discuss specifics, Sarah said firmly. I can only warn you that Earth is protected. The chamber broke into chaos again. This time the laughter was louder and lasted longer. Sarah saw some delegates showing each other images on floating screens. The pictures showed Earth's space programs, the simple rockets, the small space stations, the basic satellites. One delegate shouted over the noise, perhaps they have pointed sticks. Very dangerous pointed sticks. The laughter grew even louder. Chairman Hive Prime finally restored order again. He looked down at Sarah with what might have been amusement. Young human, we appreciate your inner caution, but you must understand our position. Your species has existed in space for less than 100 of your years. We have civilizations here that are older than your sun. He gestured to a section where creatures made of what looked like living metal sat quietly. The ancients there have been traveling the galaxy since before your world had life on it. The Karathi can reshape reality with their thoughts. The Zephyrians can move faster than light without ships. Sarah nodded. I understand that you are all very advanced, but I still must deliver my warning. Please do not approach Earth without going through proper diplomatic channels. The chairman's shell clicked as he shifted in his massive seat. What if we choose to inspect your world? What if we want to see these defenses you speak of? Then I strongly advise against it. But what would happen if we did? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. Some looked amused. Others looked bored. A few looked curious. I don't know exactly what would happen, she said finally. I'm just a diplomat. But I know that my people are very serious about protecting Earth. Please don't test our defenses. The chairman leaned forward. You realize that this council has the power to simply take what it wants? We do not need your permission to visit any world. You have that right under galactic law, Sarah agreed. But having the right to do something and having the ability to do it safely are different things. This brought another wave of laughter from the delegates. Sarah could see that her message was not being taken seriously at all. Chairman Hive Prime stood up to his full height. He was enormous, at least 12 feet tall. Little human, we thank you for your warning. But I think it is time for you to learn about the reality of galactic power. He gestured, and several screens descended from the ceiling. They showed massive ships, vessels the size of cities, bristling with weapons that glowed with energy Sarah couldn't identify. These are just a few of our patrol fleets, the chairman said. Each ship could destroy every military force on your planet without taking damage. We have thousands of them. Sarah watched the displays without changing expression. The ships were impressive, she had to admit. They looked like nothing humanity could build. They moved through space like living things, twisting and flowing rather than flying straight lines. I'm sure they're very powerful, she said, but I still must ask you to stay away from Earth unless you're invited. The chairman's antennae drooped slightly. You truly do not understand, do you? You cannot threaten the council. You cannot make demands. You are one small world with primitive technology. I'm not making threats or demands, Sarah said calmly. I'm giving a warning. There's a difference. The chairman looked around at his fellow delegates. Many were still making sounds that meant laughter in their various languages. Very well, he said finally. If you insist on this foolishness, we will demonstrate why warnings from primitive species are meaningless. He touched something on his arm, and one of the screens changed to show 3 ships separating from a larger fleet. They were sleek and dark, with curves that hurt to look at directly. I am sending an inspection fleet to your Earth, the chairman announced. 3 ships. Just 3. They will evaluate your planet's defenses and report back to us. Then we will see how serious your warnings really are. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Chairman, please reconsider. I'm asking you not to do this. The decision is made. Captain Zektar, you will take your fleet to this Earth and show these humans what real power looks like. On the screen, Sarah could see movement in one of the ships. A figure appeared. Another Karathi with even more tentacles than the ones in the chamber. It will be my pleasure, Chairman, came a voice like oil on water. How long should I give them to surrender? Oh, let us be generous, the chairman said, and Sarah could hear the amusement in his translated voice. Give them 5 minutes? No, that seems too long. Give them 1 minute to surrender completely. The chamber exploded in laughter again. Delegates were slapping their seats, making musical noises or producing whatever sounds meant humor for their species. Sarah tried one more time. Please, I'm begging you to reconsider. Don't send your ships to Earth. But Chairman Hive Prime had already turned away from her. The demonstration will begin shortly. Perhaps after this you will understand your place in the galactic order. As the laughter continued around her, Sarah closed her eyes and said a quiet prayer for the 3 ships heading toward her home. She had tried to warn them. Now they would learn why her warnings were necessary. The laughter in the Galactic Council chamber went on for nearly 10 minutes. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of the platform, waiting for it to die down, her face showing no emotion. She had been trained for this. Earth's leadership had known exactly how the Council would react to humanity's warning. Chairman Vextar Hive Prime finally raised his arms again. The various sounds of alien amusement slowly faded to whispers and occasional chuckles. Forgive us, young human, the chairman said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. But you must understand how your warning sounds to us. Your species has been in space for less time than it takes some of our ships to complete a single journey. He gestured to the floating screens that still showed the massive council fleets. "We have been the masters of this galaxy for longer than your entire planet has had complex life. We have destroyed civilizations that ruled 1,000 worlds. We have seen stars born and watched them die." A new voice spoke up from the crystal section. The Zephyrian who stood was larger than the others, with veins of silver running through its clear body. When it moved, light bent around it in strange ways. "Perhaps we should show our new friend some of our capabilities," it said. Its voice sounded like someone singing underwater, so she understands what she is dealing with. The chairman nodded. "An excellent idea, Crystal Singer Vorth." The screens changed to show something that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. A massive ship appeared, easily 50 miles long. It looked like it was made from a single piece of dark metal, with no visible seams or joints. Strange symbols glowed along its hull in patterns that seemed to shift when she looked directly at them. "This is the World Breaker," Crystal Singer Vorth explained. "It is one of our smaller vessels used for dealing with rebellious planets." The screen changed to show the ship approaching a world that looked similar to Earth. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown continents. Sarah watched in horror as the ship extended something that looked like a crystal spear from its front end. "Watch carefully," Vorth said. The spear touched the planet's surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then cracks of light began spreading across the continents. The cracks grew wider and brighter until the entire world was covered in a web of brilliant lines. The planet broke apart like a glass ball dropped on concrete. That world had a population of nearly 8 billion, Vorth said casually. They thought their planetary shields would protect them. They were wrong. Sarah watched the pieces of the broken world spinning away into space. "Why?" she asked quietly. "They refused to follow council directives," the chairman answered. "They were given many chances to comply. They chose to resist." The screen changed again, this time showing a different kind of ship. This one was organic-looking, all curves and flowing lines. It pulsed like a living heart. A Karathi delegate floated higher in its tank. "This is one of our reality shapers," it said in its bubble-popping voice. "Watch what it can do." The screen showed the ship approaching a solar system with several planets. But instead of attacking them, something much stranger happened. The planets began to change. Their orbits shifted. Their sizes altered. One gas giant became rocky. A rocky world became gaseous. "We rewrote the basic laws of physics in that system," the Karathi explained. "Gravity works differently there now. Time moves at a different speed." The inhabitants found their own bodies changing to match the new reality. "Did they survive?" Sarah asked. "Some did. The ones who adapted quickly enough. The others, well, when the rules of existence change, not everything can keep up." More screens appeared, showing weapons and ships that defied everything Sarah knew about science. There were vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, weapons that could age targets to death in seconds, ships that could hide inside black holes and emerge anywhere in the galaxy. The demonstrations went on for nearly an hour. Each species showed off their most impressive technology. The council members were clearly enjoying themselves, pointing out details and making comments about the various ways they could destroy entire civilizations. Sarah watched it all in silence. Some of the weapons were things humanity had theorized about but never built. Others worked on principles that human science hadn't even discovered yet. Finally, the screens faded away. Chairman Hive Prime looked down at her with what she assumed was satisfaction. "Now do you understand?" he asked. "This is what you are warning about Earth's defenses. These ships and weapons that can reshape reality itself. Do you still think your little planet has anything that could threaten us?" Sarah looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. Some looked amused. Others looked bored, as if the demonstration had been routine for them. A few looked almost sorry for her. "Yes," she said simply. "I still think you should stay away from Earth." The chamber exploded in laughter again, louder than before. Several delegates were making gestures that needed no translation. They were pointing at her and shaking their heads. "Incredible," shouted a delegate from a species Sarah didn't recognize. It looked like a walking tree with too many branches. "The primitive thinks its sharp sticks can threaten star killers." "Perhaps their defense is very loud noises," called another voice. "Maybe they will shout at our ships until they go away." The chairman let the laughter continue for a few minutes before calling for order again. "Human ambassador, we appreciate your dedication to your world, but this has gone on long enough." He touched his arm again, and the screen showed the 3 ships that had separated from the fleet earlier. They were sleek and dark, moving through space faster than anything Sarah had ever seen. Captain Zektar's inspection fleet is already on its way to your Earth, the chairman announced. They will arrive in approximately 6 of your hours. When they do, your people will have exactly 60 seconds to surrender completely and unconditionally. Sarah felt cold. What happens if they don't surrender? Then your planet will serve as a demonstration to any other primitive worlds that might think they can issue warnings to the Council, the chairman said. We will not destroy it completely, that would be wasteful. But we will remove your military capacity and establish a council administration to govern your people properly. The Karathi captain appeared on the screen again. His tentacles were writhing in patterns that looked excited. I am particularly curious about these defenses your ambassador mentioned, he said. It has been some time since we encountered a species that thought it could resist us. This should be entertaining. How many ships are you sending? Sarah asked. Just 3, the chairman replied. We considered sending one, but we thought that might seem insulting. 3 ships should be more than enough to handle whatever your planet can produce. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. 3 ships. The Council was sending 3 ships to test Earth's defenses, and they thought that was being generous. I would like to request permission to contact my government, she said. To warn them about the incoming ships, the chairman's antennae twitched. Permission denied. Your people will learn of our arrival when Captain Zektar chooses to announce himself. It is better this way. No time for them to panic or make foolish decisions. Please, Sarah said. Let me at least warn them that you're coming. The decision is final, the chairman said firmly. Your people will have 60 seconds to surrender when our ships arrive. That is more time than most species receive. Around the chamber, delegates were making bets on what would happen. Sarah could hear fragments of conversation through the translation devices. I wager they surrender in 30 seconds, one voice said. Too long. They will give up the moment they see our ships, replied another. Perhaps they will try to attack. That would be amusing. With what? Their chemical rockets? They might as well throw rocks. Crystal Singer Vorth spoke up again. What if they actually have some defensive capability we don't know about? The chamber fell quiet for a moment. Then the laughter started again, even louder than before. Impossible, the chairman said when he could be heard again. We have observed their world for several cycles. We know exactly what they have. Primitive spacecraft, simple weapons, basic energy sources. There is nothing there that could threaten even one of our ships. But what if we're wrong? Vorth pressed. The chairman's shell clicked as he shifted in his seat. Then Captain Zektar will deal with whatever surprises they have. But I assure you, Crystal Singer, there will be no surprises. This is a primitive world with primitive defenses. Sarah tried one more time. Chairman, I'm begging you to reconsider. Please don't send your ships to Earth. No good will come of this. The ships are already on their way, the chairman replied. But I will make you an offer, young human. When Captain Zektar reports that your planet has surrendered, we will be generous in our terms. Your people will be well treated under council administration. And if they don't surrender? The chairman was quiet for a long moment. Then they will learn what happens to species that overestimate their own capabilities. The screen showed the 3 ships moving through hyperspace, reality bending around them as they traveled faster than light toward Earth. Sarah watched them get smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the distance. How long until they arrive? She asked. 5 hours and 37 minutes, the chairman said. Captain Zektar floated in the command center of his ship, the inevitable conclusion. His tentacles moved across the control surfaces with practiced ease, monitoring the readouts as his small fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Through the viewing portal, he could see Earth hanging in the distance like a blue and white marble. It looked exactly like the intelligence reports had described, a small, unremarkable world with a single moon. Nothing special about it at all. Status report, Zektar ordered, his voice creating bubbles in the liquid that surrounded him. All ships operational, replied his tactical officer, a younger Karathi whose tentacles moved in nervous patterns. The swift retribution and final answer are in formation and ready for the demonstration. Zektar let himself feel a moment of satisfaction. 3 ships against an entire planet. It seemed almost unfair, but the council had wanted to make a point about warnings from primitive species. Begin scanning the system, he ordered. I want to know everything about their defenses before we announce ourselves. The ship's sensors reached out across the solar system, probing and analyzing everything they touched. The initial results appeared on the screens around Zektar's command center. Scanning complete, his science officer reported. We are detecting... Sir, this is odd. What is odd about it? Well, their technology is even more primitive than we expected. Most of their spacecraft are still using chemical propulsion. We're seeing some basic fusion reactors, but nothing that should pose any threat to our shields. Zektar's tentacles curled with amusement. Perfect. And their military forces? Scattered across the planet's surface. Some orbital installations, but again, very basic. Sir, I'm not detecting anything that could even scratch our hull plating. Excellent. Zektar moved to the communication station. Prepare to broadcast on all frequencies. Let us introduce ourselves to these humans properly. The communication officer's tentacles danced across the controls. All frequencies ready, Captain. Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1, now. Zektar straightened himself to his full height within the command tank. When he spoke, his voice would be transmitted to every radio, television, and communication device on Earth. Attention, inhabitants of the world designated Earth. I am Captain Zektar of the Galactic Council Enforcement Fleet. You are in violation of galactic law by issuing threats and warnings to the Council. He paused to let that sink in. On the screens around him, he could see Earth's communication networks lighting up as the message was received and retransmitted around the planet. Your representative claimed that your world possessed defensive capabilities. The Council has decided to test these claims. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender completely and unconditionally, or we will demonstrate why warnings from primitive species are meaningless. Zektar cut the transmission and waited. Around him, his crew monitored Earth's communication networks. The response was immediate and chaotic. Military channels activating, government frequencies buzzing with activity, civilian networks exploding with panic and confusion. Then, through all the noise came a single calm voice from what the computers identified as Houston. Texas, unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense Command. You are in violation of Sol System territorial space. Please state your intentions or withdraw immediately. Zektar's tentacles writhed with amusement. Did they just demand that we state our intentions? It appears so, sir. His communication officer replied. Magnificent. Send a response, visual this time. I want them to see what they're dealing with. The main screen activated, showing Zektar in his command tank. He made sure the camera captured his full size and the obvious technological superiority of his ship's bridge. Earth Defense Command, he said, letting contempt drip from his voice. You have 50 seconds remaining to surrender. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to demonstrate the consequences of challenging the Galactic Council. To emphasize his point, Zektar activated his ship's intimidation displays. Energy shields flared around all 3 vessels, glowing with power that could shatter asteroids. Weapon systems cycled online, their energy signatures visible across multiple spectrums. The ships themselves began to glow with the barely contained forces within them. The display was designed to terrify primitive species into immediate submission. It had worked on hundreds of worlds. The response from Earth was not what Zektar expected. Unknown vessels, you have not stated legitimate intentions. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal or defensive measures will be taken. Zektar stared at the communication panel. Did they just threaten us? Sir, his science officer called out, tentacles moving frantically over his instruments. I'm detecting something unusual. What kind of unusual? There are objects throughout this system. Thousands of them. I initially cataloged them as natural debris and artificial satellites, but they're moving in coordinated patterns. Zektar's good mood began to fade. Show me. The tactical display lit up with contact markers. At first it looked like normal space traffic. Satellites around Earth, some spacecraft moving between planets, mining operations in the asteroid belt. But as Zektar watched, he began to see the pattern. The objects weren't random. They were positioned strategically throughout the entire solar system, from Mercury to beyond Pluto. How many objects are we tracking? He asked. Over 50,000 discrete contacts, sir, and that's just what we can detect with passive scans. 50,000? Zektar felt a cold sensation in his lower tentacles. Even primitive satellites shouldn't be that numerous, sir. His tactical officer called out urgently. Something is approaching from Earth. The main screen switched to show a view of Earth's surface. As Zektar watched in growing confusion, something enormous began rising from what his computers identified as the Pacific Ocean. It wasn't a ship in any sense that he recognized. It was a structure, a massive platform that stretched for miles in every direction. As it rose, water cascaded from its edges like waterfalls, revealing geometric patterns and installations that hurt to look at directly. What is that thing? Zektar demanded. Unknown, sir. It's the size of a small moon, but that wasn't the worst part. As the platform continued to rise, Zektar could see that it wasn't alone. Similar structures were emerging from Earth's Atlantic Ocean, from its major land masses, even from the polar ice caps. Multiple contacts, his tactical officer shouted. Dozens of large structures emerging from the planet's surface. The proximity alarms began screaming. Sir, we have incoming objects from multiple vectors. Zektar's command center erupted in chaos as his crew tried to track everything that was suddenly moving toward them. The orderly tactical display became a nightmare of flashing lights and warning signals. Report, Zektar snapped. Something is approaching from Earth's moon. His science officer called out, his voice higher than usual. But sir, the moon is opening. On the screen, Zektar watched in horror as Earth's moon cracked apart like an egg. But instead of rock and metal, the interior was filled with structures and lights. The moon wasn't a natural satellite at all. It was some kind of massive space station. Sir, contacts throughout the asteroid belt are activating, another officer reported. What we thought were mining platforms are deploying weapon systems. Weapon systems? What kind of weapon systems? Unknown design, sir. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. Zektar tried to make sense of what he was seeing. This was supposed to be a primitive world with basic defenses. Instead, he was looking at the most sophisticated military network he had ever encountered. Sir, incoming transmission from Earth. Put it through. The calm voice from Houston returned. But this time, there was something different about it. Something that made Zektar's tentacles curl with sudden fear. Unknown vessels, you have failed to comply with our withdrawal request. You now have 10 seconds before defensive measures are implemented. Defensive measures? Zektar sputtered. We are a Galactic Council enforcement fleet. You cannot threaten us. 5 seconds, the voice replied. Around his ship, space was suddenly full of moving objects. The asteroids he had thought were natural were unfolding like flowers, revealing weapons platforms that dwarfed his own vessels. The space between Earth and Mars was crisscrossed with energy beams that seemed to be powering up massive installations. Sir, we're being targeted by over 300 weapon systems, his tactical officer reported, his voice barely above a whisper. 300? Actually, sir, that number is still climbing. Zektar looked at the tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of service. Pure terror. His 3 ships, which had seemed so powerful when they arrived, now looked like toys floating in front of a war machine that spanned an entire solar system. Sir, his communication officer said quietly, I think we should consider withdrawal. Before Zektar could respond, new contacts appeared on the screen. Something was coming out of Earth's sun. Captain, his science officer said in a voice filled with disbelief, I'm reading massive structures inside the star itself. How is that even possible? Zektar stared at the display, watching as ships emerged from the nuclear fire of Sol like sea creatures rising from the depths. They were beautiful and terrible, made of materials that shouldn't be able to exist in those temperatures. Captain Zektar floated in his command tank, watching his tactical displays with growing horror. What should have been a simple demonstration of galactic power had turned into the most terrifying situation of his long military career. Sir, we're still unable to engage hyperspace, his navigation officer reported, tentacles trembling with fear. Something is interfering with our jump drives. What kind of interference? Unknown, sir. It's like the space around us has been changed somehow. The normal physics aren't working. Zektar's science officer suddenly made a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. Captain, you need to see this. The object approaching from Earth. It's not what we thought. The main screen focused on the massive structure rising from the planet's surface. As it climbed higher, Zektar could see that it wasn't just emerging from the ocean. It was connected to something much larger below. Sir, that's not a ship or a platform, the science officer continued. It's the top of a structure that goes all the way down to Earth's core. The entire planet appears to be hollow, with the outer shell rotating around a massive internal framework. That's impossible, Zektar whispered. Sir, I'm detecting similar structures throughout the system. What we identified as planets. They're not natural worlds. They're artificial constructs built around central frameworks. The screen split to show multiple views. Mars was opening like a flower, its northern hemisphere sliding away to reveal a shipyard that stretched beyond the horizon. The construction bays were filled with vessels that made Zektar's ships look like children's toys. Jupiter wasn't a gas giant at all. It was some kind of massive processing facility, with energy collectors that reached deep into the planet's artificial core. As Zektar watched, streams of pure energy began flowing from Jupiter toward the inner system. Sir, his communication officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from one of the Earth constructs. Put it through. The screen changed to show a human woman in what appeared to be a military uniform. She looked remarkably similar to Ambassador Chen, but there was something different about her eyes. They held a confidence that spoke of absolute power. I am Admiral Chen of the Solar Defense Network, she said. I believe you've met my sister, Sarah. Admiral Chen? Zektar felt his tentacles curl with fear. The ambassador had been warning them on behalf of someone with real military authority. You were warned not to approach Earth without proper diplomatic channels. Admiral Chen continued. Since you chose to ignore that warning, you're now experiencing a demonstration of why we gave it. This is impossible, Zektar managed to say. Your technology is primitive. We've observed your world for cycles. Admiral Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. You observed what we wanted you to observe. Did you really think a species capable of interstellar warfare would show you our real capabilities during first contact? The screen split to show multiple views of the solar system. Everywhere Zektar looked, he could see structures powering up that defied every law of physics he knew. Your scans detected chemical rockets and basic fusion reactors, Admiral Chen said. Those are our civilian transportation systems. What you're seeing now is what we use when someone threatens our home. Saturn's rings suddenly blazed with light. As the illumination faded, Zektar could see that the rings weren't ice and rock at all. They were massive particle accelerators, stretching millions of miles around the planet. The outer planets are our manufacturing centers, Admiral Chen explained casually. Uranus and Neptune process raw materials from the Kuiper Belt. Saturn builds our larger ship components. Jupiter powers the whole system. And the inner planets? Zektar asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Mercury is our primary weapons testing facility. Venus handles atmospheric engineering. We've been terraforming worlds for centuries. Earth, of course, is command and control for the entire network. Admiral Chen gestured, and the view expanded to show the space between planets. What Zektar had thought was empty void was actually crisscrossed with structures. Transport tubes, communication networks, and defense platforms that stretched across billions of miles. But how? Zektar whispered. How did you build all this without us detecting it? The same way we've been building it in hundreds of other star systems, Admiral Chen replied. Very carefully and with a lot of patience. The words hit Zektar like a physical blow. Other star systems? Captain, did you really think Earth was humanity's only world? We've been spreading across the galaxy for over 1,000 years. We just haven't announced ourselves yet. New contacts began appearing on Zektar's sensors, ships jumping into the system from hyperspace. But these weren't human vessels. They were the same design as his own fleet. Sir, his communication officer said in a voice filled with panic, those are council ships, but according to their transponders, they're from fleets that went missing decades ago. Admiral Chen's smile grew wider. Oh, those. Yes, we've encountered quite a few council exploration fleets over the years. Most of them chose to join us rather than return to report what they'd found. Join you? Humanity has a very simple philosophy, Captain. We prefer cooperation to conflict. But we're very good at conflict when cooperation isn't possible. The screen changed to show the interior of what appeared to be a council ship. But the crew wasn't entirely alien anymore. Zektar could see humans working alongside Karathi, Zephyrians, and species he didn't recognize. The galaxy is a big place, Admiral Chen continued. There's room for everyone. But some species insist on trying to dominate others. We've found that a strong defense network tends to discourage that kind of behavior. Zektar's tactical officer made a choking sound. Sir, the asteroid belt is kind of moving. On the screen, the entire asteroid belt was reconfiguring itself. What had looked like random chunks of rock were revealing themselves to be components of a massive structure. As they connected to each other, they formed a ring around the sun that dwarfed any of the Council's mega-projects. That's our primary defensive platform, Admiral Chen explained. It's designed to protect the inner system from large-scale attacks. Each asteroid contains enough firepower to destroy a Council dreadnought. How many asteroids are in the belt? Zektar asked weakly. About 40,000 major ones, plus several 100,000 smaller platforms. We like to be thorough. Zektar's legs gave out and he sank to the bottom of his command tank. 40,000 weapons platforms, each capable of destroying a dreadnought. His 3 ships were facing more firepower than the entire Council fleet possessed. Sir, his science officer called out, I'm detecting movement inside Earth's sun. Admiral Chen nodded. Ah, yes. We should probably explain that. The star you call Sol isn't entirely natural anymore. We've been making improvements over the centuries. The screen showed the sun's surface where massive structures were emerging from the nuclear fire. They looked like ships, but they were built on a scale that made planets seem small. Solar engineering is one of our specialties, Admiral Chen said. When you can manipulate stellar matter directly, you can build some very impressive things. Those ships you're seeing? They're powered by stellar cores. Each one has the energy output of a small star. Zektar felt his world collapsing around him. Everything the Council thought they knew about physics, about warfare, about the balance of power in the galaxy. It was all wrong. Why? He managed to ask. Why didn't you reveal yourselves before now? Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Because we hoped we wouldn't have to. Humanity has learned some hard lessons about what happens when powerful species meet weaker ones. We've spent centuries trying to find a better way. What kind of lessons? The kind where entire civilizations disappear, Admiral Chen said quietly. We've seen what the Council does to species that can't defend themselves. We decided that would never happen to us, or to anyone under our protection. The screen split again, showing dozens of star systems. In each one, Zektar could see the same thing. Defense networks that spanned entire solar systems, built around modified stars and artificial planets. How many systems do you control? Zektar asked. Control is the wrong word, Admiral Chen replied. We protect over 200 star systems. Most of them house species that the Council would classify as primitive. They're under our defense umbrella now. 200 systems. Zektar felt his tentacles go numb. Humanity wasn't just another species trying to join the galactic community. They were already a galactic power, possibly larger than the Council itself. What do you want from us? He asked. Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. Nothing. We want you to leave our space, return to the Council, and report what you've seen. Tell them that humanity is willing to discuss peaceful coexistence, but only between equals. And if the Council decides to attack, Admiral Chen's smile returned, but this time it was cold as space itself. Captain, you're looking at one star system's basic defenses. We have installations like this in hundreds of systems, connected by faster-than-light communication networks and supplied by manufacturing centers that can build fleets in a matter of days. She paused to let that sink in. If the Council wants a war, we'll give them one. But I promise you, it won't be the kind of war they're used to fighting against primitive species. Zektar looked around his command center at his terrified crew, then back at the human admiral on the screen. Your release in the Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. For 6 hours, the assembled delegates had watched the live transmission from Captain Zektar's fleet. What began as entertainment, watching a primitive species learn its place in the galactic order, had become the most terrifying experience in galactic history. Chairman Vexistar Hive Prime sat motionless in his massive chair, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. Around the chamber, delegates from dozens of species stared at the now dark screens in stunned silence. The laughter had died 3 hours ago, when Earth's moon cracked open to reveal a space station the size of a small planet. The gasps of disbelief had faded 2 hours ago, when Jupiter proved to be an artificial construct powering weapons that defied known physics. The whispered conversations had stopped 1 hour ago, when Admiral Chen calmly explained that humanity protected over 200 star systems. Now there was only silence and the sound of various species trying to process what they had witnessed. Crystal Singer Vorth was the first to break the quiet. The Zephyrian's voice came out as a broken chime like glass bells cracking under pressure. "They were watching us," she whispered. "All this time they were watching us." A Karathi delegate floated higher in his tank, tentacles moving in slow, shocked patterns. The missing fleets. All the exploration vessels that never returned. They weren't lost in space accidents. They joined humanity, another voice added. Entire council fleets choosing to defect rather than return home. Chairman Hive Prime finally moved, his shell clicking as he shifted forward. "How many fleets have we lost in the outer sectors?" 47 vessels over the past 50 years, replied the council's military coordinator, a six-armed creature whose species specialized in strategic planning. "We assumed they encountered natural hazards or hostile unknowns. They encountered humanity," the chairman said quietly, "and chose not to come home." Ambassador Sarah Chen still stood on the central platform where she had been for the entire transmission. She hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't even changed expression. She simply waited. Now as the silence stretched on, she cleared her throat softly. "Chairman Hive Prime?" The chairman's compound eyes focused on her with difficulty, as if he was having trouble remembering where he was. "Yes? My sister's offer stands. Humanity is willing to discuss peaceful coexistence between equals." "Equals?" The chairman repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. "Yes, equals." A new voice spoke from the section reserved for the ancients, the metal beings who claimed to be older than most stars. When they spoke, their voice sounded like machinery grinding slowly to a halt. "We have ruled this galaxy for 10 million years," they said. "We have seen species rise and fall like waves on a beach. We have never encountered anything like this." "What you encountered," Sarah said calmly, "is what happens when a species decides that might makes right is not an acceptable way to organize a galaxy. But the power," whispered a delegate whose species Sarah didn't recognize. "The sheer scale of what they've built. How did we not see it?" "Because you weren't looking for it," Sarah replied. "You were looking for primitive species to dominate or advanced species to compete with. You weren't looking for a species that might be protecting others." Crystal Singer Vorth's light began to flicker in patterns that indicated deep distress. The council has destroyed worlds, entire civilizations. If humanity has been watching "We know," Sarah said simply. "We've known for centuries." The chamber erupted in sounds of distress. Some species wailed, others made mechanical grinding noises. A few simply went silent, which for their species indicated complete emotional collapse. "How many?" the chairman asked in a voice barely above a whisper. "How many of the species we destroyed were under your protection?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "None." "None?" "We learned about the council's methods early in our expansion. We made sure to reach threatened species before you did. Every civilization you destroyed had already rejected our offer of protection." The implications of that statement hit the chamber like a physical blow. Humanity had been watching the council for centuries, tracking their movements, predicting their targets, and offering sanctuary to species that would otherwise be destroyed. "You've been managing us," the chairman said, his voice filled with something that might have been awe or terror. "For centuries, you've been managing the entire galactic political situation." "We've been trying to minimize harm," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference." A Karathi delegate made a sound like bubbles bursting. "The species that fought back successfully against our fleets, the ones that seemed to develop advanced weapons overnight, that was you." "Sometimes we provided defensive technology," Sarah admitted, "when species showed they could use it responsibly." "And the ones that surrendered too quickly? The ones that gave up without a fight?" "We may have provided intelligence about the futility of resistance. It seemed kinder than letting them be destroyed." Chairman Hive Prime slowly rose to his full height. Even at 12 feet tall, he seemed small and fragile in the vast chamber. "You've been protecting the galaxy from us. We've been trying to create a situation where protection wasn't necessary," Sarah said, "where species could coexist without the strong dominating the weak. By becoming stronger than everyone else." Sarah nodded. "When the only language bullies understand is force, sometimes you have to speak their language." The chairman looked around the chamber at his fellow delegates. Many were openly weeping, though tears meant different things for different species. The Zephyrians were flickering like dying lights. The Karathi's tentacles drooped with despair. Even the ancient metal beings seemed dimmed. "What do you want from us?" the chairman asked. "Reform," Sarah said simply. "The council can continue to exist, but not as a tool for domination. Work with us to create a system where all species have representation, where conflicts are resolved through negotiation rather than force." "And if we refuse?" Sarah's expression didn't change. "Then humanity will continue to protect the species you would dominate, and the council will become increasingly irrelevant as more worlds choose our protection over your rule. You're offering us a choice between partnership and obsolescence." "I'm offering you a choice between growth and stagnation. The galaxy is big enough for everyone, but only if everyone agrees to share it." Crystal Singer Vorth spoke again, her voice now a barely audible whisper. What if we want to join you, like the missing fleets?" The chamber fell silent again. It was one thing to consider reform. It was another to consider abandoning their entire civilization to join humanity's network. "Individual defections have always been welcome," Sarah said. "But I think the galaxy would benefit more from reformed institutions than from their complete collapse." The chairman sank back into his chair. "You're not conquering us. You're giving us a chance to save ourselves." "Conquest was never the goal," Sarah said. "The goal was always to create a galaxy where species like yours didn't feel the need to conquer others, by becoming unconquerable yourselves, by showing that there was a better way." The chairman was quiet for a long time. Around the chamber, delegates began murmuring to each other in their various languages. The conversations were subdued, but Sarah could hear the tone changing from despair to something that might have been hope. Finally, the chairman spoke again. "What would reformed council membership look like for humanity?" Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Full voting rights, permanent representation on all major committees, and equal status with all other species, just like we originally requested. And in return, we'll share some of our defensive technologies with council members, help establish protection networks for vulnerable species, and work together to create a more stable galactic civilization." "Some of your technologies?" "The ones appropriate for maintaining peace," Sarah clarified. "We're not interested in starting an arms race." The chairman looked around the chamber one more time. When he spoke, his voice carried an authority that Sarah hadn't heard before. "All in favor of granting immediate full membership to humanity, with all rights and privileges thereof?" The response was instantaneous and unanimous. Every delegate in the chamber raised their hands, tentacles, appendages, or whatever they used to indicate agreement. Opposed? Silence. Abstaining? More silence. By unanimous vote of this council, humanity is granted full membership, with permanent seats on all major committees and councils. Chairman Hive Prime stood again and faced Sarah directly. "Welcome to the Galactic Council, Ambassador Chen, though I suspect that's not the title we'll be using much longer." "What do you mean?" "I suspect that very soon we'll be calling you something else." The chairman's antennae twitched in what Sarah recognized as humor. "Something like Director Chen of the Galactic Peacekeeping Council." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "That's quite a promotion." "It's quite a new galaxy we're building," the chairman replied. "It's going to need new leadership." As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, many stopped to speak with Sarah. Some offered congratulations.